Christmas used to mean predictability, same house, same overcooked turkey, same quiet arguments disguised as jokes. My parents had always been rigid people, but holidays gave that rigidity a routine. You showed up, you smiled, you left. My daughter Lily was 10 that year. Old enough to care deeply about the small rituals adults barely noticed. She spent 2 weeks preparing gifts for them. Not expensive things. Careful things. A mug she chose for my father because it had a picture of a fishing boat. A scarf she insisted my mother would like, even though my mother never wore scarves. She wrapped everything herself, crooked tape and too much ribbon. That afternoon I had to work late. Lily asked if she could still drop off the gifts. It's Christmas, she said. They'll be happy. The house was only a 20-minute walk. I said yes. When I got home 3 hours later, the first thing I noticed was the silence. No TV. No music. Just the dull yellow light from the kitchen. Lily was sitting at the table. All the presents were stacked in front of her exactly the way she'd wrapped them. She hadn't even taken off her coat. I remember putting my keys down and asking a question that felt normal at the time. How were your grandparents? She hesitated the way children do when they're trying to decide whether something bad is allowed to exist. They didn't let me come in. I didn't respond immediately. Children sometimes exaggerate moments. Sometimes they misunderstand adult conversations. So I asked carefully, "What do you mean?" She looked at the table instead of me. Grandma opened the door. I said Merry Christmas. I showed her the presents. A pause. She said it wasn't a good time. Another pause. She said I should go home. I could see her hands now. Red from the cold. Still holding the ribbon ends of the gift bags. Did Grandpa say anything? She shook her head. The door just closed. She walked home alone after that. 10 years old. Carrying gifts meant for people who wouldn't let her inside. She spent Christmas afternoon sitting in an empty house, waiting for me to come back. I didn't shout. Anger would have been easy. Loud. Temporary. Instead I felt something colder settle into place, because the truth was, my parents depended on me far more than they liked to admit. The house they lived in. My name was on the property transfer when my father's business failed 8 years earlier. The monthly payments that quietly covered their taxes and insurance. My bank account, the small consulting contract that kept my father, see me, retired, instead of bankrupt, my company. They liked telling people they were independent. Technically they weren't. I made Lily dinner first, macaroni and cheese from a box. Nothing special. But she started talking again while she ate, which mattered more than the food. We watched half of a Christmas movie. Then I went into the other room and started making phone calls. Not dramatic ones. Administrative ones. I called the property manager who handled the rental agreement on the house. I asked him to begin preparing documents transferring the property back into market listing status. Nothing illegal. Nothing rushed. Just the start of a process. Then I called my accountant. I told her the family support payments should end after the current billing cycle. No explanation needed. Finally, I emailed the HR manager at my company and asked that my father's consulting arrangement not be renewed in January. It was scheduled to expire anyway. I simply removed the extension. The entire thing took about 40 minutes. I returned to the living room and finished the movie with Lily. She fell asleep halfway through, her head leaning against my arm. 5 hours later the first phone call came. My father's voice sounded confused. Almost offended. Apparently the property manager had emailed about reviewing ownership docu early in the new year. Is there some mistake? He asked. No, I said. Silence stretched across the line. Then my mother spoke in the background, asking what was happening. I kept my voice calm. Lily came by today. Another silence, longer this time. Eventually my father said something defensive about misunderstandings and timing, and how Christmas had been complicated. I let him finish. Then I said the only thing that mattered. She walked home alone. The words seemed to land slowly. He started to say something else. Something about calling tomorrow. But tomorrow wasn't really relevant anymore. Because the arrangements that had quietly supported their version of stability had already begun to shift. Nothing dramatic happened overnight, no shouting. No threats. Just paperwork, timelines, and the slow understanding that certain privileges had been built on goodwill. Goodwill they'd spent. Weeks later, Lily asked if we were still visiting my parents next Christmas. I told her the truth. Don't know. Families don't always collapse loudly. Sometimes they just change shape. What I did know was this: my daughter would never again stand on someone's doorstep, carrying gifts for people who didn't want to open the door.